The transition from physical life to the spiritual realm is perhaps the most profound journey any soul will undertake. Yet, this crucial passage remains shrouded in mystery, particularly for our elderly who approach this threshold with questions unanswered and fears unaddressed. In those initial moments after physical death, the soul experiences a remarkable shift in consciousness. Many spiritual traditions describe this as a sensation of extraordinary lightness and freedom. The constraints of physical suffering, pain, and limitation dissolve almost instantly. This first experience is not one of confusion or fear, but rather an expansion of awareness that transcends our earthly understanding. The soul typically hovers near the physical body for a brief period, witnessing the activities surrounding it. This is not cause for distress, but represents a gentle transition phase where consciousness begins to adjust to its new state of being. The soul observes with detachment rather than emotional turmoil, experiencing a profound sense of peace that surpasses any earthly contentment. During this initial phase, many souls report experiencing a profound review of their life events, not as judgment, but as understanding. This panoramic life review occurs with remarkable clarity and emotional depth. Each action, each choice, each relationship is observed not only from one's own perspective, but also through the experiences of others who were affected by these choices. This represents the soul's first step toward deeper spiritual awareness and understanding. What few spiritual teachers explain to the elderly is that this life review is not meant to induce guilt or regret, but serves as a profound learning opportunity. The soul comprehends, perhaps for the first time, the magnificent interconnectedness of all living beings and the ripple effects of even the smallest acts of kindness or moments of neglect. The physical sensations commonly reported during this transition include moving through what many describe as a tunnel of light. This phenomenon appears consistently across cultures, religious backgrounds, and historical periods. The light itself is described as being of incomparable brilliance, yet causes no discomfort to perceive. Rather, it radiates pure, unconditional love and acceptance, drawing the soul forward with gentle insistence. Ancient wisdom traditions, including the profound insights shared by Cayce, suggest that this light represents the divine source from which all souls originate and to which all souls return. It is not merely a visual phenomenon, but a conscious, loving presence that knows each soul intimately and welcomes it home with perfect understanding. What the elderly are rarely told is that no soul faces this journey alone or unprepared. The spiritual realm operates with perfect timing and compassionate assistance. The fear of death that plagues so many in their final years stems not from the reality of what awaits, but from misinformation or lack of spiritual preparation for this profound transition. During these initial moments, the soul begins to perceive reality through entirely new senses. Physical limitations fall away, replaced by a form of knowing that transcends our earthly understanding of the five senses. This heightened awareness allows the soul to perceive the thoughts, emotions, and energies of those still in physical form, particularly loved ones who grieve their passing. The soul's perception of time fundamentally changes as well. What might seem like mere moments to the transitioning soul could represent hours or even days in earthly time. This explains why so many who have briefly experienced this state through near-death experiences report the sensation of timelessness, an eternal present moment where past, present, and future seem to exist simultaneously. For those who have lived conscious, mindful lives with spiritual awareness, this transition occurs with remarkable ease and grace. The soul recognizes its true nature and embraces the journey forward. However, for those who have lived without spiritual awareness or preparation, this transition may initially bring confusion as the soul adjusts to its new reality. This is why spiritual preparation during life, particularly in one's elder years, is of such paramount importance. The understanding that death represents not an ending, but a transformation, allows the soul to approach this transition with anticipation rather than dread, with curiosity rather than fear. One of the most profound and comforting truths about the transition from physical life concerns who awaits us on the other side. This sacred knowledge has been consistently reported across spiritual traditions, near-death experiences, and deathbed visions, yet is rarely shared with our elderly. as they approach this significant threshold. The soul is never left to navigate this journey alone. As physical life draws to its conclusion, spiritual presences gather to assist with this momentous transition. These guides typically appear in forms that will bring comfort and recognition to the departing soul. Most commonly, these are beloved family members and friends who have previously crossed into the spiritual realm. They come not as vague shadows or distant memories, but as vibrant, loving presences, radiating healing energy and profound welcome. What makes this spiritual reunion so remarkable is that these guides appear not as they were at the end of their physical lives, often limited by age, illness, or infirmity, but in their prime, radiating health, joy, and vitality. They come in a form that the transitioning soul will most easily recognize and find comfort in. This explains why so many in their final moments speak of seeing departed parents, spouses, children, or dear friends waiting to welcome them home. Beyond these familiar presences, spiritual teachings reveal that souls of higher spiritual development, what many traditions call guides, angels, or ascended masters, also participate in this sacred transition. These beings of light have often watched over the soul throughout its earthly journey, though their presence usually remains undetected by physical senses. At the moment of transition, their energy becomes perceptible to the departing soul, offering profound reassurance and guidance. The presence of these beings serves multiple purposes in the transition process. They provide emotional support and reassurance, dissolving fears that might otherwise cause the soul to resist releasing its connection to physical existence. They offer energetic assistance, helping to gently disentangle the soul's energy from its physical form. Perhaps most importantly, they serve as guides, helping the newly freed consciousness navigate the initial stages of its spiritual journey. Across diverse spiritual traditions, we find remarkable consistency in these accounts. The Tibetan Book of the Dead speaks of peaceful and wrathful deities who guide the soul. Christian mystics describe angels and saints who come to escort the faithful. Indigenous traditions worldwide speak of ancestor spirits who return to guide their loved ones home. These are not mere cultural interpretations, but reflections of a consistent spiritual reality that transcends religious boundaries. What the elderly are rarely told is that these welcoming presences begin to gather even before the moment of physical death. Many hospice workers and medical professionals have observed dying individuals engaging in conversations with unseen presences in their final days or hours. Far from being dismissed as hallucinations or confusion, these interactions represent genuine spiritual perception as the veil between worlds begins to thin. According to deep spiritual understanding, the precise nature of who comes to receive each soul is not random, but perfectly orchestrated according to the soul's needs and spiritual connections. Those who shared the strongest bonds of love, not merely blood relations, but souls with whom there exists profound spiritual connection, are often the first to appear. This explains why some report being greeted by friends who held special significance, rather than family members with whom relationships may have been more complex. The reception of the departing soul involves not judgment or evaluation, but unconditional love and acceptance. This represents one of the most healing aspects of the transition, particularly for those whose earthly lives were marked by feelings of unworthiness or fear of divine punishment. The love that permeates this reception transcends human understanding, embracing the soul in its totality, both its accomplishments and its failures, its moments of grace and its missteps. In the teachings preserved from ancient mystical traditions, including insights Cayce shared, we learn that souls who have fulfilled specific agreements or shared particular missions in physical life often come to receive those with whom they made these sacred contracts. These soul connections, formed before birth, represent spiritual bonds that transcend physical relationships and continue beyond the threshold of death. For the elderly who approach their transition with spiritual awareness, this knowledge offers profound comfort. Understanding that beloved faces await them transforms the perception of death from fearsome isolation to joyful reunion. It allows them to approach their transition not with dread, but with anticipation, not with resistance, but with peaceful acceptance. This sacred understanding has been validated countless times through the consistent reports of those who have briefly glimpsed beyond the veil through near-death experiences. as well as through the remarkably similar deathbed visions reported across cultures and throughout history. These are not mere coincidences or cultural constructs, but glimpses of a spiritual reality that awaits each soul. One of the least discussed aspects of the afterlife experience is what spiritual traditions identify as the adaptation period, a crucial transitional phase that occurs after the soul has left the physical body, but before it fully integrates into the higher spiritual realms. This period represents a gentle acclimation to the soul's new state of being, yet is rarely addressed when discussing death with our elderly population. During this adaptation phase, the soul exists in what might be described as an intermediate state. Having released its connection to physical form, it has not yet fully adjusted to its expanded consciousness or spiritual environment. This period varies in duration according to the individual soul's development, attachments, and the circumstances of its transition from physical life. For souls who held strong attachments to physical existence, to their bodies, homes, possessions, or routines, this adaptation period may involve a continued awareness of the earthly plane. The soul may linger near familiar environments, observing loved ones and familiar settings with a mixture of detachment and continued interest. This is not a state of being stuck or earthbound, as some traditions might suggest, but rather a natural phase of gradual detachment from physical concerns. What spiritual teachers often fail to explain to the elderly is that this continued awareness of earthly matters does not stem from confusion or resistance, but serves a compassionate purpose. It allows the soul to witness the continued well-being of loved ones, to observe the honoring of their memory through funeral rituals and remembrances, and to gradually release emotional attachments at a pace that serves its highest good. During this period, the soul begins to experience the remarkable nature of its new existence. Physical limitations dissolve as consciousness expands beyond the confines of space and time. The soul discovers its ability to move according to thought rather than physical effort, to communicate through direct transmission of consciousness rather than words, and to perceive reality through expanded awareness rather than limited physical senses. This adaptation phase also serves as a period of emotional and spiritual integration. The panoramic life review that began at the moment of transition continues in greater depth and detail. The soul observes the patterns, lessons, accomplishments, and growth opportunities of its completed lifetime, not with judgment or regret, but with deepening understanding of how each experience contributed to its spiritual evolution. What makes this period particularly significant is that the soul retains its sense of identity and individual consciousness, while simultaneously beginning to reconnect with its higher spiritual nature. It experiences itself as both the personality it developed during physical life and as something far more expansive, the eternal spiritual being that temporarily expressed itself through that personality. According to profound spiritual insights, including those Cayce shared from his trance states, this adaptation period also serves as preparation for the soul's eventual transition to appropriate spiritual environments or thought regions that correspond to its level of development and consciousness. These are not reward or punishment realms as simplified religious teachings might suggest, but rather environments that perfectly match the soul's vibration and provide optimal conditions for continued growth and understanding. For souls with spiritual awareness and development, this adaptation phase flows naturally and effortlessly. However, for those who maintained rigid belief systems, strong materialistic attachments, or significant unresolved emotional issues, this period may require more extensive adjustment as the soul reconciles its earthly beliefs with spiritual reality. The assistance provided during this phase is remarkable in its wisdom and compassion. Spiritual guides and loved ones who welcome the soul at its transition continue to offer support, helping the newly freed consciousness understand its experiences and adjust to its expanded awareness. This guidance is offered with perfect respect for the soul's free will and individual path of unfoldment. What the elderly deserve to understand is that this adaptation period represents not confusion or disorientation, but a divinely orchestrated transition designed with perfect wisdom. The soul is never abandoned to figure things out alone, but is surrounded by loving assistance, tailored to its unique needs and level of understanding. During this time, The soul may also experience healing of conditions that affected it during physical existence. Limitations of the mind that resulted from physical brain conditions, such as dementia, stroke effects, or mental illness, dissolve as the soul reconnects with its intact spiritual consciousness. Emotional wounds begin their healing process as the soul perceives the higher purpose behind challenging relationships and experiences. One of the most beautiful aspects of this adaptation period is the soul's growing awareness of the interconnectedness of all life. Freed from the illusion of separation that characterizes physical existence, the soul begins to perceive the unified field of consciousness that underlies all creation. It recognizes itself as both an individual expression of divine consciousness and an integral part of the greater spiritual whole. For many souls, this period also involves reunions with the wider soul family, not just those who came to welcome them at transition, but the larger spiritual community with whom they share deep connections across multiple lifetimes. These reunions bring profound joy and recognition as the soul remembers connections that transcend any single physical incarnation. The adaptation period concludes when the soul has fully adjusted to its expanded state of being and is prepared to move forward in its spiritual journey. This transition occurs naturally, guided by the soul's own expanding awareness, rather than external judgment or arbitrary timelines. The transition from physical life to spiritual existence brings the soul face to face with perhaps its most profound spiritual work, the integration and resolution of unresolved emotions, particularly regrets, that remain from its earthly journey. This aspect of the afterlife experience carries tremendous implications for how we approach our elder years, yet remains largely unaddressed in conversations with our aging population. In the spiritual realm, consciousness creates reality in a direct and immediate way. While the physical world contains buffers between thought and manifestation, the afterlife environment responds instantly to the soul's emotional state and thought patterns. This means that unresolved regrets, guilt, resentments, and attachments don't simply fade away upon transition. They become formative energies that shape the soul's initial experience in the spiritual realm. What spiritual teachings reveal is that these unresolved emotions do not serve as punishment, but as opportunities for profound healing and growth. The soul encounters these lingering attachments not through external judgment, but through self-reflection. As consciousness expands beyond physical limitations, the soul perceives with perfect clarity how its choices, actions, and omissions affected both its own development and the lives it touched during physical existence. For those who transition with significant unresolved regrets, opportunities missed, relationships damaged, potential unfulfilled, these emotions create what some spiritual traditions describe as a self-created purification state. This is not punishment imposed by external authority, but the soul's own recognition of growth still needed and lessons not yet fully integrated. Ancient wisdom traditions, including the profound insights Cayce accessed during his trance states, suggest that this process serves the soul's highest evolution. By experiencing the emotional impact of its choices with expanded awareness, the soul gains deeper understanding of universal spiritual laws, particularly the principle that all beings are interconnected in the unified field of divine consciousness. What the elderly rarely hear is that preparation for this aspect of the afterlife journey can begin during physical existence. Every act of forgiveness offered, both to others and to oneself, lightens the emotional burden the soul carries forward. Every effort to make amends, to heal broken relationships, to express previously withheld love or gratitude, creates freedom and expanded awareness that serves the soul both in its remaining physical time and in its spiritual journey beyond. The soul's encounter with its unresolved emotions also reveals the perfect justice and compassion of spiritual law. Those who lived with awareness of their impact on others, who practiced compassion and service, who made efforts to correct mistakes and learn from missteps, find their transition marked by greater freedom and expanded consciousness. This is not reward in the conventional sense, but the natural consequence of alignment with spiritual principles during physical life. This understanding holds particular significance for the elderly, who often find themselves reviewing their lives, considering paths taken and not taken, relationships nurtured or neglected. Rather than allowing this natural life review to become a source of regret or self-recrimination, spiritual wisdom encourages using this time for conscious integration, for extending forgiveness, expressing gratitude, making peace with choices made, and releasing attachments to what cannot be changed. What makes this aspect of spiritual transition so profound is that it ultimately leads to liberation rather than limitation. As the soul works through its unresolved emotions in the spiritual realm, it experiences progressive freedom from the very patterns that created suffering during physical existence. The soul recognizes that its mistakes were not failures, but necessary steps in its eternal development. Experiences that, however painful, contributed to its evolution and understanding. The spiritual assistance available during this process is remarkable in its wisdom and compassion. Guides and more evolved beings do not impose healing, but create conditions that allow the soul to recognize its own path toward integration and wholeness. This might involve experiencing the effects of actions from the perspective of those affected, witnessing how different choices might have created different outcomes, or receiving the unconditional love that makes genuine self-forgiveness possible. For souls who lived with spiritual awareness, who made efforts toward personal growth and service to others, this process unfolds with relative ease. The review of unresolved matters becomes less about regret and more about deeper understanding of the soul's journey and its purpose. Such souls recognize that even painful experiences and apparent failures serve the higher purpose of spiritual evolution. As this integration process completes, the soul experiences a profound expansion of consciousness. Freed from the limitations of unresolved emotional patterns, it perceives with greater clarity its connection to divine source and its place within the greater spiritual community. This represents not an endpoint but a new beginning, the soul now prepared to continue its eternal journey with expanded awareness and purpose. The profound truth that deserves to be shared with our elderly is that death does not end the opportunity for healing and growth, but transitions it to a level of greater clarity and potential. The soul carries forward both its accomplishments and its unfinished business, not as burden, but as continued opportunity for evolution. Nothing of value is ever lost. No love ever given was wasted. No spiritual growth achieved is ever diminished. In the light of this understanding, the approach of physical transition can be embraced not with fear, but with peaceful acceptance. The elderly deserve to know that the spiritual journey continues with perfect justice and compassion, that the love they have given returns to them multiplied, that their struggles and growth have eternal significance beyond what they could perceive within the limitations of physical existence. The silence surrounding these spiritual truths has created unnecessary suffering and fear. By sharing this deeper understanding of the soul's journey, including its encounter with and resolution of unresolved matters, we offer our elderly population the opportunity to approach their transition with awareness, dignity, and spiritual preparation. In this knowledge lies the potential for their final years to become not a time of fear and regret, but a sacred period of integration, completion, and peaceful anticipation of the next phase of their eternal journey. If these spiritual insights about life's final transition resonated with you, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel. Your subscription enables us to continue sharing these profound truths that are so rarely discussed. Leave a comment below sharing your thoughts or experiences. Your perspective may provide comfort to others on this same journey. Remember, understanding death transforms how we live. Subscribe now and join our community seeking deeper wisdom about life's greatest mystery.